So, good morning, everybody. So this is our Thursday meeting for the, what was the business manager meeting, but especially today, more focused on the ESSER federal funds. And so on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we invite or especially on those days, we invite whoever is going to be the lead on the application to also join us. So to ensure that they have an opportunity to ask any questions about the application. So hopefully everybody has everybody that's going to be in charge of the application for these federal funds has had an opportunity to log into it. I know I do have a couple of emails that I am working on getting to today. And so I will get to those. And so any issues that people are having, we'll make sure that we can get you into your application. So as always, we're going to, for the most part, keep people muted. If you need to ask a question or comment, please raise your hand. And we have a couple of people monitoring the people raising hands and the chat. And of course, that's the other way you can always ask a question, make a comment, is through the chat. And so we do save those, the meeting recording and the chat for each meeting. And so that way, if there's any outstanding questions, we can always go back to that. And of course, we do have JC Holmes from the department who records any of these questions, so that if there's something for which we can't answer at the meeting on use of funds, we will send that on to our partners at USED and await for their reply. So I did not have anything in particular this morning. So I'm not sure if Chelsea, if you have anything in particular for this morning. Otherwise, we can go. We can take questions and go over, I guess, a couple of things.
So I just want to acknowledge that we are obviously accepting your questions, and we've sent every question to our program coordinator with USED. And yesterday morning, I had sent that. Here are the questions again. We sent the first batch on May 5th. When do you think we might be hearing from you? And she was wonderful. She actually called and said, keep emailing me every day, keep asking this question, and I will ask the folks that write up the policy documents to respond to you. She also acknowledged and said, I understand that Maine was one of the first to receive funding. We feel badly that you're not getting the responses you need, but we're doing our best. So I know some of you have specific questions that you sent us that you need answered before you can submit an application. So we will be transitioning to once a week ESSER calls next week. But if we get those answers before the once a week meeting, I'll make sure that we send it out through all of our listservs, to the newsroom and through GEM, because I know some of those questions are a big portion of your vision for where this money needs to go.
So if anybody has any questions around the funds, how they're thinking they're going to use the funds, now is we hadn't actually planned to present anything specific today. And so now today would be a great day to, as you've had a couple of days to look at your application and talk with your school department, the other leadership in your school department around how you might use those funds, how you think you'd like to, and you want to make sure that those are allowable uses, or how would you code that use of funds. We do have a number of people from the department that can, we can answer what we can, and we will send on to the program coordinator at USED for anything that we can't. So Chelsea, we do have what day next week?
So we haven't decided, because we know that you folks, this is news to you. And we were looking at just one day, like I said, but we wanted to bring the concept to you and pick that date more so as a group. but we'll also record it. So if we pick a date and you're like, no, that date doesn't work for me, it'll be recorded. So you can check it out that way. But one day, 10 o'clock, we're looking towards Monday, just because that would give us the chance to get all of your questions and submit them, and give the USED a week to respond. But if Mondays are not what's best for everyone, because I know they can also be hectic, we're happy to take your recommendations. And before we get off the call, settle on a day together. Heather, I see it is a holiday next week.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I was gonna say that, but somebody threw it in the chat, so.
Okay, well, we can't do Monday next week. So I guess we'll go to Tuesday. I want us to have as much detail as possible. Heather, your question about curriculum. If you are needing to purchase something in order to provide instruction to kiddos because of everything that's changed with COVID-19, you'll be allowed to do that. Amy, should we see a private school list? There's been a lot of questions around equitable services, and we need to be very clear that we are following the law. And we are following the law right down to the point where if you have someone that is asking, am I receiving money? You have to have that consultation with them. Jackie Godbout went through this yesterday during the Equitable Services office hours. That is not something that I'm going to be able to give you a one-on-one, this school is eligible, this school is not eligible. So if you've sent an email asking that question, I don't have that information and I won't be able to provide it. What I can tell you, which Jackie shared yesterday, was that there are private schools that are eligible based on statute, section 1117. And if they are eligible, they may or may not generate an equitable share based on the data that they have available. So that's why the consultation is going to be so important. If you have further questions about equitable services, you need to reach out to Jackie Godbout. We are following the Title I statute. We are following the law. We are not following the guidance. Commissioner Macon sent that in a memo last week. The application, it doesn't appear the projects for private schools are separate. That is true. Our district has a question on how the reimbursement process will go. The reimbursement process will go very similar to how it goes for all other federal programs. Once you have an approved application, the reimbursement portal will be open to you. Are we using a different process or the same for ESEA grants? The same for ESEA grants. Who do we email a request for an invite to the meeting? Go to our ESEA lead who will lead the ESSERF application. I might need a little bit more help on that one. I'm not sure what the specific question is. Deanna?
Okay, I forgot I could talk. Our ESEA lead is going to be the lead on this project, but she doesn't have an invite to this meeting, and I think she should be attending them. So who do we email to get her invited? Would it just be Tyler, or is there somebody else?
Yep, just me.
Thank you.
If we plan to use the funds to help with curtailment that we expect, how could we write that in the application? We're not talking about curtailment, right? So yesterday, we had a guest speaker, Vicki Wallach, from the Maine Superintendent's Association, but the Maine DOE has not recommended one way or another, nor do we have information to be able to create any guidance around this as of today. So if you're planning to not apply immediately, then that's fine. If you decide to put your application in next week and things change, then so long as the funding hasn't been requested for reimbursement, you'll be able to do so. Would curriculum materials include subscriptions for Seesaw? So again, Teresa, this is a question that kind of goes back to, as a result of COVID-19, teaching and learning has changed. If you put in a clear description as to why it's had to change for your district and why this resource would continue to support your students and their learning, then that would be acceptable. It really always goes back to how does it connect to the crisis and the pandemic of COVID-19. If you can make a clear justification, then you should be just fine. But again, it is going to be one-off. If we see something that isn't allowable, we will message you through the GEM system. So we'll open it back up and tell you why it's not allowable. I'm suspecting that in most cases, it will simply be that there wasn't enough information, right? So if you just put in the application, we're purchasing resources for online learning, that wouldn't be sufficient for us to be able to provide approval, right? Because the moment that you put that in there, Tyler's going to have to be looking at what it is you're purchasing to make sure that the fund codes are correct. And then the reimbursement, the person reviewing your reimbursement request will need to look to see what is that program or resource that was purchased. So that's why those details are going to be important on the front end. And what's the timeline for applying? The application is open now. The only requirement was that the Maine Department of Education had to get the allocations out to states within 1 year of receiving our grant award notification. So we've done that. So we very much expect that, many of you may decide to wait a month, 2 or 3 months, and that's absolutely okay. Whereas some of you may have already purchased devices to get our kiddos through this tough time, and you'll want to apply right away and seek your reimbursement. That's really a local decision. Mary, if CARES funds may be used for allowable expenditures since March 13th, would that also hold for private schools, or would restrictions on reimbursement for private schools prohibit that? Mary, excellent question. So the question is about timelines, right? So for a SAU, the guidance the Department of Ed has provided both verbally and in written form is very clear in their FAQs document that if it occurred on or after March 13th and it is related to COVID-19 and included in your approved application, you will be able to seek reimbursement. Now, that is different than your equitable services with private schools. So everything that they've put in writing is that you need to have your consultation first before private schools are able to start spending, having you spend the money that you're the fiscal agent for to provide their services. If that changes, I will let you know. As you know, everything with equitable services that's been coming out of the department doesn't always line up with statute. So, but that is where we are today. They cannot be spending money and hoping that you're going to provide reimbursement, because remember, you're the fiscal agent. So you are the only person that can purchase something on behalf of a private school. So I haven't thought of a way that it would be possible for them to buy something in March and for you to have made that payment for them, right? Because in order to understand what will be in the application, you have to have consultation. And then you have the consultation and you know what they're working on. But if you're the fiscal agent, you need to pay those bills on their behalf. They would never have purchased something. We can never give a private school funding, right? So we could never cut a check to a private school, even if what they did on March 13th was really helpful for kids. It's just not how equitable services work. Jackie and Shelley, I know you did a webinar yesterday. Is there anything that you talked about on this topic that I have missed?
No, excellent.
Well, 6 years working with Jackie Gaba, I'm getting closer to her excellence. So thank you, Jackie. Would these specifics about materials go in the project description with the general paragraph referencing those major projects? So I would suggest, yes, you have the information in the general paragraph, but again, on the budget page, you have that section where you need to give a description about what it is that you're actually purchasing. And I don't want to send the message that we're looking for every tiny detail, because of course we know that you might be negotiating prices for products and you might go with one vendor over the other. So it's not so much the specific type of laptop that you want to buy that we're looking for, but if it is something that is specific to the type of learning resource, then we would need to have that detail. Again, because we would not be able to approve your reimbursement request if we can't check back on an approved application to make sure that it was included in that application. And the other thing here, though, that's important to note is that we will not say, well, this is it. You have an approved application. That's what's in the approved application. You don't have any other flexibilities. Let's say you end up changing your direction in a month after you have your approval and your grant award notification. That's okay. You just need to email the department and the department will reopen your application and you can put in those new details. If we have specific, from Lisa, if we have to be specific with the online learning program we're using, how do we know what future programs we're going to use to include in the application? We have a year to use the funds, so there may be a new program. Absolutely, Lisa. So that last answer completely connects to this question. Things are changing, and every day new great ideas are being created to support kiddos. So if you have that change, Lisa, let us know and we'll reopen for you. But also, you're not required to apply for the funding on a specific timetable from the DOE. That only requirement that we had to follow was that we allocate the funds to you within 1 year. When will that webinar be available? Christina, I'm not sure. I think I might not be keeping up with the questions fast enough. So I'm not sure which webinar I might have mentioned.
This is Jackie. I think it was the ESEA one, and I just checked and it's not posted on our website yet. So I have to check with our ESEA team webmaster to see when it will go up.
Okay,
it was just done yesterday. It takes a couple days and then the webmaster will put it up.
So will you be putting it on that page where you have all the other webinars, Jackie?
Yes.
I'm going to grab that link and put it in the chat. Jackie, there's one more question for Dawn while I grab the link that you probably could just take for.
Dawn, I'll respond to your email that you sent me this morning. Basically what you have to do is take the number of poverty students that attend the private school that would attend one of your Title I schools. You accumulate those numbers, you divide it by your Title I school poverty levels to determine that proportionate share. And from there, you apply that proportionate share to your award amount. And that's the typical process. So I do have a little calculator piece that I could probably modify to work generically that can help, or you can email me and I can correspond with you. And I don't know how to shut off my phone, so I'll mute myself.
Thanks, Jackie. So there is a question, can we add, subtract, change projects through the life of the grant? And the answer is yes. So once just because you submit an application now, based on what you have for information, does not stop you from opening up the application later in the year or later in the cycle of the grant.
So we're really going to look back though, right? When you reopen it, it's how much funding do you have left to work with? So that's why it's so important that the two people on this call from your district, the business person and the program lead, are in constant communication. Most of you, we've seen during monitoring visits for ESEA, you have a really great tracking system. So you know exactly down to the penny how much money you have left in each approved project. So if you have the money available and you want to reopen, we'll be here to help. In the chat, I did put the link. So the Equitable Services webinar that occurred yesterday at 10:30 will be up on that website probably by tomorrow. So if you have those questions, hopefully they'll be answered there. And if not, reach out to Jackie. But again, we have to reiterate, we as a state have said we are going to follow the law because that's legal and binding. We are not following guidance because it does not align with the law. And in the end, we have to follow the law. So if you are getting questions from non-publics, please share with them everything we've shared with you, right? We need to be fully transparent. Commissioner Macon was clear, our state will follow the law. Some of you probably saw the Portland Press Herald article yesterday. That I think does a nice job of laying out what the two different perspectives are and also where Maine's delegation is in this discussion. And you might have noticed a few members of our delegation have made sure that everyone knows they're working on cleaning up this mess in another bill related to COVID-19 because this isn't something just Maine is struggling with, it was happening across the country. Idaho and Pennsylvania have also decided, yes, we're going to follow the law. So those are two states that are taking a very similar approach. Crystal, earlier we talked about guidelines for starting school in the fall, such as a full-time nurse, desks 6 feet apart, double bus runs. Any news on the guidelines? We currently have a nurse who works only half day. So starting school in the fall, Commissioner Macon and Deputy Commissioner Tuda have been working with ed leaders over the past several weeks and groups of leaders across the state that really understand public health and understand what it would mean truly to bring kids back to school. But we recognize that other states have already published their return to school plans. But for us, it is so important that all of the leaders a part of this work, including our superintendents, our nurses, public health officials, are a part of this conversation. So there is a larger group of people that meet on a regular basis to talk about our plan. And I believe they're meeting again on May 27th to go over the framework that has been created. There was a question 2 days ago about will the summer school guidance look like the return to school guidance? Now, because the work is currently underway and it is such important work, I don't have an answer for that yet, but I can tell you that many of you have either superintendents or curriculum leaders that are a part of this conversation because that is the core group. They're the educational leaders from across the state. So MSMA, MCLA, MADSEC, they're all representing, their constituents, their group of folks on this work group. So feel free to ask them questions or us, but like I said, it is still a work in progress. So there isn't a sneak peek to offer at this point in time. Jackie has shared her email address if you have a question. I have another message. Our ESCA coordinator is a retired teacher and is paid a fee for her work on Title I. Could we build funds into the CARES budget to pay her as well? So I think it's more of the question, what will her work be that is related to the needs because of COVID-19, right? A lot of these questions, if you think about it through that lens, that will give you your answer. If you don't have a good justification for how it connects to COVID-19, then we wouldn't be able to approve it. I think we're caught up. And also, I want to acknowledge the Fortin in my last name. I'm clearly French. I'm on a Zoom call throwing my hands around. None of you can see my hands except for when they fly up.
I didn't realize that was a French thing because I do it too, and I have no French in me. So.
All right, so if we don't have any more questions coming in, I want to give you the gift of time, but also let you know it looks like Tuesday is the day. So most people said in a private message, Tuesday will work. So we will see you Tuesday at 10 a.m. And we hope you have a fantastic holiday weekend.
So, and we will meet tomorrow with the business manager still, and we will actually as we continue to gather feedback around the reopening in the fall, we are going to we'll talk about that again tomorrow to gather some more feedback from your perspective. So that'll be part of at least part of what we go over tomorrow. So I'll have some questions around that so that we can provide feedback to the process. Oh. So I have a message about the DUNS number. So I don't have that offhand. And I don't specifically know how to answer that right now, but I can get back to you on that.
So Tyler, that question came up yesterday down in Bradstreet. There is an organization. If you've lost your number, you'll have to contact them.
Okay.
And I can send that to you, Tyler, so you can send that information to whoever sent you the private message.
Okay. Sounds perfect. So I think otherwise we're basically done with answering questions and putting out information for today. And so those business managers again that are interested in providing some feedback around the reopening in the fall, can join us tomorrow, and we will discuss that.